Good evening, everybody. For me, it's a privilege to be here. When I received the invitation, I was very happy to participate. But when I start looking at the presenters, I got a little scared because I said, this is the wrong person they are inviting. So I have to say that everybody who presented before me, they are pros, and the ones that are going to present after me, they're also pros. But and I wanted to share with you this evening a little bit, not about how to preach, but how to prepare the church for preaching the three angels' messages. So I hope that we can all contribute with this. If there's something that you'd like to offer in collaboration with what we're talking, don't feel bad, just interrupt and we can just continue the presentation. This should be a little bit of a conversatory also. All right, so when we talk about preparing the church or preparing any activity, basically we have to take in consideration a couple of things, but I presented in 3 points that I want to focus tonight. The first point is establishing the vision. The second point is planning for the activity. And the third point is the implementation of the activity. So when we talk about evangelism, or we're talking about an evangelistic seminar or a revival week with evangelism in mind, we have to take those 3 things in consideration. What is the vision that we're talking about? So the first thing being the vision. So what is the vision when you're trying to establish something? Well, we all know that vision is where we want to get. But I believe that we have to start talking about the proper motivation. And when we talk about proper motivation, some people believe that, well, Pastor, this is basic. You're talking about our church being motivated to preach. As I've been traveling and working in different countries, I have seen that sometimes, yes, sometimes the church don't have the proper motivation. When I arrived in the Amazon, the first time I was called to be a pastor, I received 12 churches, and my district had 12 churches. I have to work with those 12 churches, and I discovered that we had some churches that were very well motivated and very well focused on ministry and mission, and they wanted to continue preaching. They wanted to preach the message that we have to preach. Evangelism was the center of their minds. But later, as we continue visiting and knowing those churches, I discovered that some of those churches, especially the larger ones, had a little bit more difficulty establishing evangelism. And once we start talking about that, I receive information that, Pastor, we don't like evangelism because sometimes the pastors, when they want to do evangelism, they just want to do numbers. And they parade a number of people to get baptized. And let me give you a little bit of the context. This is the Amazon and was 20 years ago. And there was a little bit of interest in getting numbers with the evangelism campaigns. And so they say, Pastor, that's not the proper right thing to do. We don't believe that just preaching to baptize people and just to get the numbers up. So it's correct. If the proper motivation for the church to be doing this is not there, we're going to have a problem. So what is the proper motivation when we talk about this? Why should we talk about the three angels' messages, or why should we do evangelism in general? Why is the Seventh-day Adventist involved in doing and preaching the gospel? The specific exclusive gospel that we have. And let me clarify this. Sometimes we talk about the three angels' messages as the proper communication that's given in Revelation, but the summary of the three angels' messages are the doctrines that the Seventh-day Adventist has that is exclusive to our church. The three angels' messages are very clear about the Sabbath. They're very clear about the sanctuary. And they're very clear about all the things at the end of the times that we live now, that we have to be careful with not following the error of Babylon. So in summary, as Ellen White say at the end, three angels' messages in its verity is justification by faith. So in reality, when we preach the three angels' messages, we have to understand that we are simply giving to the world the forgotten truths that it's not being said by the other churches. So now, why we preach the three angels' message? Why is this important? What is the right motivation? Well, I got some text here that I want to share with you, quotations from Ellen White, and I want to share this one. It says, these messages, the three angels' messages, received and acted upon, are doing the work to prepare a people to stand in the great day of God. If we search the scriptures to confirm the true God has given to servants of the world, we shall be found proclaiming the first, second, and third angels' messages. It's interesting that Ellen White is very clear to say that if we understand the message, we will preach it. In other words, if we study, she'd say, we will be preaching it immediately. So in reality, for us to see why we have to preach is because it moves the church. If we got to understand the message, we'll be preaching it, because we'll not tolerate error to be spread out. We will not see error as something welcoming for the Christian faith. We'll be motivated to do it. So why we should talk about the three angels' messages? First, it moves the church, and second, it's our calling as people of the church. Look what she says. She said in Church Triumphant, decided efforts should be made to bring the message for this time prominently before the people. The third angel is to go forth with great power. Let none ignore this work or treat as of little importance. The truth is to be proclaimed to the world that they may see the light. This is our work. The light that we have upon the third angel's message is the true light. Again, it's our calling. We have to do it. And not only because it's our calling, it moves the church to continue growing. We cannot have a dying church. We cannot have a static church. The church doesn't fit only our own needs. The church must fit the mission that God and purpose that God has for the church. We don't have to be consumers. We have to be practicing what we believe. And the third reason why we believe that we should talk about the three angels' messages more often is because it's relevant to the times that we live in. We know that now everything is at stake. The third angel's message is to be at this time regarded as the highest importance. It's a life and death question. Now think about that for 2 seconds. It's a life and death question. If we had this information that will change the lives of many, should we keep it to ourselves? Should we keep this for our own consumption? No. This message needs to be shared. And the proper motivation that we have as church is to understand that this is our job. It's part of what we do. We want an alive church. We want to be involved with the others. We will love them. And this is a very important thing. We preach because we love the ones around us. That is the proper motivation. Now, who should do this work? And this is something that people ask all the time. Pastor, you are full-time paid to do this work. Is that your work and your work alone? Who should be involved in this? And this helps us to establish the vision that we have. The laborers of the church is we, the church. And we have to be very clear about this. This is not a one-person job. It's everyone's job. The more people that are involved in this, the more successful a campaign can be. An evangelistic session will be successful as everybody's involved in it. Christ commits to his followers an individual work, a work that cannot be done by proxy. Ministry to the sick and the poor, the giving of the gospel to the lost, it's not to be left to committees or organized charities. Individual responsibility, individual effort, personal sacrifice is the requirement of the gospel. So it's not a choice that we do it if we want to do. It's a requirement for the gospel. if we believe in what you preach, if you believe in the gospel, you'll be sharing to others, because we, the church, we are the laborers that are called to do this work. Now, a very important thing, and I believe that this helps to set the vision, is also the goal of the series. Now, you might say, Pastor, the ultimate goal is to lead souls to Jesus. That is correct. But how you do it, and specifically, you tailor some activities specifically to get some specific results. When we talk about this series, who do we intend to reach in this series? And I want to be clear about this, because you have some public evangelism series, you have prophetic seminars that can be done. By the way, if you do a public evangelistic series, generally, church is not the best place to do it. You generally do outside the church. You probably want to plant a church, and you find a place that you'd like to start that series. As I'll mention something about this later on, I was baptized on a church plant project. My father was the pastor. He was the evangelist for the conference. And the church decided to buy an empty lot, and we did a 60-day evangelism series. And the result of that evangelistic series was a church plant. I wasn't the time to be baptized at the time. I made my decision to follow Jesus at the time, and that was when I was baptized too. So if you decide to do a public evangelistic series, who do you what's your goal to reach? And it's a very important thing. I want to mention about this experience I had in New York many years ago. It was a church that was very small. They had at one point the conference wanted to close the church, and they asked two friends. We are two elders in one specific church. They asked us to go and help that church. So I came in as an elder and a Bible worker for the Glencove Seventh-day Adventist Church. The church probably had about 12 people, and they were mostly from one family. The interesting thing is that they had two ladies. They were married to non-Adventist men. And one of these ladies had 4 daughters. And 3 of these daughters were married also to non-Adventist individuals. So during the Sabbath, mostly would be one family, activity with many people very happy to be together, but the families were not complete. So when we decided to do the evangelistic series, and we did 2 in the same year, and we decided to focus in what? What do you think that we focused on? We focused on the family, the husbands. And we did in a way that we could ask the husbands to come. We tied the evangelistic series. We're going to talk about dates there, but we timed the evangelistic series into a specific period where it was family-oriented activities, and the husbands came. At the end of that year, we have baptized 3 of these husbands, one of the older lady and 2 of the younger girls. And guess what? Now these families are complete. And in the understanding of a Hispanic culture, now you have the husband, the breadwinner, coming to the church with the wife and the kids and everybody. So you have a more complete church. Immediately, the result of that was not only the 3 souls that were baptized, but we had a complete church now, a more vibrant church, and even with specific growth. So it's very important when we've planned, who do we want to reach? Are the ones that we don't know, or the ones that we have connections with? And on the third line here, when I say evangelistic revival series, these are the models that we used here in Nashua and Portsmouth, and we are doing this year again. Why we're using evangelistic revival series as a model? Because we want first to motivate the church. This evangelism is not for the outsiders only. Sometimes we believe that we invite people to come, but we don't go. And we allow just the church to do the seminary there. People would be talking about all the Revelation, Daniel, and all those good stuff. But we don't allow the church to be participating. So we believe that the first most important audience that you have is our own church. So that is part of the vision. Once that vision is structured, once you have exactly what we want to accomplish, now we can go to the second part. Now, if vision is the proclamation, well, planning is the study. And what I mean by that is that you have to plan. And the first thing that you do, I think that the first thing that we have done in our churches here and throughout is to have the most members of the church involved. You can create teams that will coordinate activities. You can have them involved in taking care of one specific thing. I list here a couple of the things that I believe that are very important. You have to have a person responsible for the interest coordination, somebody that would contact the new people coming and make sure that they come and they're related to someone, or they are known by someone in the church, and get that information correct. And not only that, the people that have been studying with the church and with the church members and with the pastor, if these people are ready to make a decision, the interest coordinator will work with that. And most important than that is the prayer team. All these activities can be planned, can be organized, but if the Holy Spirit doesn't put his blessings on it, we're not going to get anything. So it's very important that we understand that this is an actual battle, a spiritual battle, that we are stealing people from the world to the church. We are bringing the people back home. So prayer is one of the most important things that we have to give attention to. So a prayer team must work before, during, and after the series. We also believe that the music is very important, has to be working. We got to know what songs are going to be presented, what songs are going to be the closing songs of the series, so people can learn to sing, people can be participating. And sound media has to be also working. Advertisement, we're going to talk a little bit about that. Some people like to put too much emphasis on advertisement. What is the most important advertisement? I believe is the contact that you can make with someone and invite that person to be with you for the first opening day. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. And obviously, a welcoming team that will take care not only of the people that will come in, but also with the activities, potlucks and all that. Let me talk about this experience that we had in 2003, 2004, beginning of 2004. We had a very nice team going to El Salvador, where we had somebody that was interested in bringing evangelism to his hometown. And he funded this team to go there. We had a preacher, we had a musician, we had a tech guy, we had another singer, we had the donor with all the support that he gave. We arrived there and we realized that the church was not even informed about what was going to happen. The pastor knew about it, but he never communicated to the church. So as soon as we arrived, we realized that we could start an evangelism series, but the church did not get involved at all. They were not working during the evangelism. There's some of attending, they came, they attend, but we knew that after that, the church would just forget everything, and the people that would be interested in the truth that was shared, they would not be followed up. So what we have to do, we decided to ask for one of the musicians he had a theological training, if he wanted to remain. And he stayed for another 6 months in the same town. He was supporting the pastor, and he mobilized the church to get these contacts back, and we ended up having a good result, but after 6 months of involvement. Because if the church is not involved, it's not going to work. It's a simple thing. It's going to be a fad comes in, people are going to hear, people are going to like, but they're going to go away. If the church is not involved, it will not work properly. So let's keep this in mind, that most of the successful evangelistic series got to have church involvement. So planning and who is going to be doing what is very important. Another important thing, and this I have mentioned this already to the administration, that I believe that this is an important thing, is regarding to who is going to be the speaker. Now, we believe that every member should present a seminar, a revelation seminar, ever present evangelistic series. every member should be involved. And that's why we have this program, to involve people, to do it at least once, to get this done. And I was mentioning about one of the important things here, that we talk about the part of the implementation, or the planning actually. When we decide the working group, the next step is to talk about the guest speaker. Well, we encourage, I mentioned this before, we encourage our members to be actively part of our evangelistic efforts. And that means to be doing evangelism. And we also encourage our pastors to be doing at least one evangelism meeting a year. And I think that is the conference recommendation. But when we talk about the model that we implement here, the model of the revival week, reviving the church, creating the whole idea with getting our church involved, and then planning this into a second stage where we continue expanding that motivational effort. I believe that a guest speaker goes a long way. And why do I say that? Simply because a guest speaker is not present on your last nominating committee. A guest speaker is someone who will bring something new. You get excitement. The church will say, let me invite you to come see this person. He's a guest. He's going to be there for a week or two, and he's going to bring something different. And I believe that there's a value on that. So when you start planning your evangelistic session or series, think about that. Think about, or you're going to invite someone from the same conference to come along, another preacher, or you're going to do yourself. If you do yourself, let's focus in doing as a church plant model. You can evaluate that way. But choosing the speaker is very important. And I mentioned this because when I was in Rwanda, I was invited one time to speak in a series, and I was not the most, my area in Rwanda was Adra. I was not directly involved with evangelism or preaching directly, but when I got the invitation, the president of the conference say, "You're coming to the church who worked the most, and the church who is going, they love evangelism, and we want you to go there and motivate the church." And I said, well, why me? And they even assigned me this guy on my left. As you can see, the picture is the next to me. His name is Fodidas Ndamil Mugabe. You know him. He's probably around. He's one of the speakers of Amazing Discoveries, and he was assigned to translate for me. And I said, he's the one who should do the evangelism. But the president said, Faridas is our guy. He stays here all the time. We know him. But because you are a missionary, a pastor from outside, we are going to give the gift to our church of your participation. I found that very interesting. And I started thinking about that, how important that look for them, and how should we also think about when we have guest speakers to become the prize or the gift that we want to give to our churches. It's an interesting understanding. So you can think about that as we plan for the next event. Who is going to be the speaker? Now, just for you to know, we had in Nashua, Pastor Gary Blanchard starting this year, and was a blessing. He motivated the church. The church got to know a little bit more about the administration, the president of our conference, and I believe it's a very positive thing, besides the fact that Gary was involved directly with preaching the three angels' messages. And as Elder Gratian mentioned, he's going to do the second part now in the second semester evangelism in Portsmouth, and he's going to be involved there, and the church is so excited because it's somebody new, and it goes a long way. I believe that's it's an interesting thing. Now you can do the same thing, as we can have our elders going to another church in the same district, or a pastor coming to my church as I go to the other church, so we can talk about that eventually on another occasion. Now, proper dates. I mentioned to you that I was baptized in a campaign the last 60 days. The church bought a land, and the church decided to start a church plant in the old style. They plant a tent. In the first 3 weeks, it was the preacher that came from the union. He was the evangelist from the union. He lost his voice after 3 weeks. Then my father was the evangelist for the conference, and he took over for another 3 weeks. And the last 2 weeks, the local pastor, the new pastor, the pastor of the new church took over. So it was an intense campaign. It was very hot in the Amazon. Everybody was coming every night. But you could see that it started, the first campaign was very strong. The second week, the third week, and it was going small. And at the end, we had about an attendance of around 60 who became the new church, which was a very positive result. But again, to hold the number of members attending, or to hold that attendance for that long, it's a little bit of a challenge for our very intense world today. But you can choose the length of the campaign according to your culture, according to the what people are used to do. I heard Pastor Tony Kafuri saying last week that he had about 4 weeks, I believe, it was the campaign done. It's very interesting. The church decide, and you go for it. Now, the model that we have done in Portsmouth and Nashua is based on 1 week program. We start Sabbath, we end Sabbath. And we start the Sabbath before the Field of Baptistry Sabbath. And the last Sabbath is the Field of Baptistry Sabbath, where we fill the tank and we close the evangelism. And we are doing this with both churches. And why are we doing this? Because we have already some people that are studying the Bible. And when we start a campaign, this campaign should be, again, an impulse for the new attendees, but also a closing deal for the ones that are making the decision. And we can have that week to close. And so we can have that cycle happening twice a year. We have heard Pastor Gratian Pereira present the cycle of evangelism. So we can have 2 cycles happening during the year, which is a very interesting way to do it. Also, you have to take consideration the weather and all the elements that we have here in our region. As I mentioned to you, Field of Baptistry is an important thing, because all the evangelists have to focus in one thing: baptisms. You can see a picture here. This is a baptism in Rwanda. They had this mobile tank. This is a mobile. I didn't have the whole picture. I was looking for it. This is like a trailer that attached to a car, so a pastor can go around going to churches after church, and he can have 3-4 baptisms in the same Sabbath, and you will not spend water, because the tank goes full to one church to another. Now, this one here on the right is very dear to me. This picture was taken around 30 years ago. This was during the Civil War of Angola. This baptism happened in an area where the church was not present, as I've heard. But when I came there one day, somebody came to my window and say that if I wanted to come to attend church, and I say, "What church are you talking about? There's no church in this town." They say, "Well, there is." I'll tell you the story on another occasion, but I came there and I saw this baptism where a pastor that had no more contact with the conference for the last 5 years because of the war. He had to travel around 7 days in the back of a truck so he could attend this baptism. He came there, so they made a hole in the floor and they filled the water, because baptisms are so important. It is our mission. Our mission is not to preach and throw the idea for someone to believe it or not. It said the message is very clear. The mission is very clear. You go, you make disciples, you teach them, and you baptize them, and then you teach them. It's a very important thing that we have to do. We have to baptize. So when you establish the proper dates, if you want to go to have baptisms in lakes or outside or in an ocean, make sure that you make sure that you have the proper dates to do that. So planning. It's very important, and that's the second part of our overall vision of how to prepare our church. And the last one, obviously, is the implementation. And how do you do that? Well, I believe that the first thing that's important for the church to do is to have a commitment. A commitment is between the church and the members. As I mentioned, the most important thing is the participation of our membership. So the first thing we have to do is to involve everybody praying for it. Evangelism is not a set of things. I have to share something with you. It's not, I'm not proud of it, but the first time I attended a pastor's meeting in my country, I heard the evangelist saying something that sounded horrible. He said, if I have to baptize 100 people in an evangelistic campaign, I don't need the Holy Spirit for that. And I was shocked. And then he said, because you have techniques that you can use to convince people. Of course, he was trying to say, use those techniques and then you convince people, but it sounded very bad. I personally believe that evangelism is a direct fight between good and evil. And we are trying to bring God to people who don't want God, or people that are under the influence, the direct contact with the enemy. So once we start working and we are bringing people out of the hands of the devil to the arms and the heart of Jesus, there is an intense battle that is done, spiritual battle, and that battle has to be won by prayer. So the first commitment that the church has to do is that they will pray for the evangelism. And the second one, they will be present during the activities. This is not something that's going to happen only for the guest speaker and the invitees. No, this is for the church to participate, for the church to be there. It's important that the church is attending. That's why you make it in a way that the church is able to do. We announce very clearly before the year, so the church can be there. And we ask them just to give us that week in the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, so we can be all together involved in this. Be present in the meetings. That's the second commitment. And the third one, you invite someone who's not attending church to come. Again, just look at our churches. We have families that kids don't come to church. We have people that know people that left the church a long time ago. We have people that can contact friends and family, and they will be probably willing to come one day. And by the way, I believe that this is the key. You never invite them for a week of evangelism. You invite them for the first meeting. Let the Spirit work and let the preacher do his job to get them to come the next day. But you invite them to come one day with you. And from that day, it goes. I want to share something here that probably you have to do some attention to this if you want to. But basically, what I'm saying is that the invitation, the personal invitation, is such a simple effort. The third commitment. It's such a simple effort. You're going to ask someone if they want to join you to come to the church to attend that special preaching. Make it special. There's a special guest, would have special songs. Come to my church for that event. Now, we can do that by mailings. If you do that by mailings, yes, you might reach more people. But as far as I understand, and there was a communication about this before, and I think we had a training about this, and I think I got the number right, that you might get one visitor coming to your church for 1,000 mailings. You correct me if I'm wrong, Dustin, if we have talked about this before, but I believe that the number sounds about right. Now think about that for 2 seconds. If you have a church, a regular attendance of 60 members in your church, and you ask them to have a commitment to invite people to come, and only half of your church agrees with you, and they will ask someone to come, and only half of that group succeed in bringing people to church, you have 15 visitors. Now, 15 visitors, it's equivalent to 15,000 mailings or $9,000 in expenses. Now, think about that. Let's say you cut that in a third of that. You got 5 visitors. Still, it's the equivalent of a lot of resources that you use. You can do mailings. It's important because you're going to get people that are not related to you at all. That is okay. There's no problem with that. But what I'm saying is this. I believe that the most effective way to do it is through personal invitations. And personal invitations are not expensive, and everybody can do it if they only commit themselves through the right vision that we give as church. So that's the first part of the implementation. Please, let's come. The second one is pretty easy because we have been doing that all the time. A warm and welcoming church. Do you have a warm and welcoming church? I mentioned to a couple of friends the other day that we were talking about something else, and I said the first time I came to a specific church, not here, another state, I came to the church, and the person who was sitting in the corner of the seat, and I came with my family, I was trying to sit, and the person felt so irritated for the fact that I was walking past, I needed her to stand up so I could walk in, and she was not comfortable. At that moment, I didn't feel comfortable at all. I thought that I was not welcome in that church. And I don't know if this not happened. We are in New England. People are very warm and they receive in a very special way. At least all churches that I've been through, I've been very warmly received. We have done a couple of more things. In Nashua, if you go to Nashua for the first time, let me take this down so you can see. If you come to Nashua for the first time, you receive a bag like this, right? It's an interesting idea that they had. You can find a couple of important things. Probably when the preacher is going to talk to you, you're going to cry. So you have some tissues. So with a little message there, you have some tissues. You also have a very important thing after COVID that became very popular. You have this hand sanitizer. I don't know, it's not seeing very well, but there you go. You have a hand sanitizer, you have a pen, and you have some also candies. And you have this book, The Battle Belongs to the Lord. This is the missionary book that's going around. And these are the gifts that you receive just for walking in for the first time, feeling welcome. You are already greeted warmly, and you receive all the attention as you walk in. And we believe that this is very important for people to know that they are being welcomed. Now, another thing that I want to show you too is this. You walk in and you receive also by the person greeting you a little card. This is a prayer request card, so it doesn't seem any intimidating. You just look at the card, and the card has 4 options here for you to mark. It says that I would like to request for the church to pray for me. I wrote my request on the back of the card, so you go to the back of the card, and there are the requests, the prayer requests. The second box said, I would like to request a visit with the pastor. So during that week, we take time for the guest speaker to go to the houses of the interest and to the houses of the ones that request a visit. I'd like to pray with someone, it says there. The third marking here you can make is for you to request Bible studies to strengthen my faith. And when we talk about decisions, this is a very important one. Because if a person wants to receive more Bible studies, don't forget, this seminary is about only a week. After that week, you continue with the Bible studies. Or if the person is already attending the church, or you have connections with that person, and the person can request also to be baptized. And you have the card or the decision card, the prayer request card, already in your hands with that person's contact. So that works very well also. We also do gift draws every night. It's a basket with some natural food and some books, and we do that for a simple reason. Once we do that, the people that receive the gift, we call their names. They start saying that we are very happy, we are a close-knit family, we have people interested in being part of that joyful moment. So it's important to have that. And of course, potlucks. The 2 Sabbaths of the campaign, the first one and the last one, would have potlucks. So the guests will stay with us, we can make contacts, we can get closer and have an important fellowship meal with them. So again, the main commitment of the church, the reception of the church is very important, and finally, the decision making. And when we talk about the decision making again, don't be disappointed if you don't have baptisms, because you already planted the seed. We have decisions for baptism, but we have also decisions to continue a Bible study. And I believe these are the most important ones, because you continue a relationship with that person, you continue inviting them to come to church. And after that, you prepare them to make decisions in probably our next evangelistic meeting, or you can just have the baptism done between the two. You can also ask someone to make a decision to attend the church regularly, and that's an important step also. The person made friends, they want to continue attending. We have in Portsmouth a very interesting case, someone that the mother was a regular Seventh-day Adventist member, and after a month that I was here, when I arrived for the first time, she passed away, and we went to her funeral, and we start the relationship with the daughter, and after now two evangelistic campaigns, actually one evangelistic campaign that she attended, she started attending the church regularly and started Bible studies. So that's a very important step that you can make. Regarding to the decision, Ellen White is very clear that in every discourse, fervent appeals should be made to the people to forsake their sins and turn to Christ. So please don't waste much time talking about the deep understanding of our theological points. No, yes, that's important to talk about it. It's important to present. But the most important thing is for people to forsake their sins and turn to Christ. And that is a very important step that somebody can make in their lives. And the second thing, and she said something very clear, please insist. Let the people understand that you have a message that means life, not only life, but eternal life to them if they accept it. If any subject should enthuse the soul, is the proclamation of the last message of mercy to a perishing world. What a thing to say. We have to insist because the decisions are made and we need to be involved on this. Basically, this ends the implementation part, but I have a final thought to share with you. Ellen White said in Testimonies for the Church, if we bring our hearts into unity with Christ and our lives into harmony with his work, the spirit that fell on the disciples on the day of Pentecost will fall on us. It's all about us accepting the responsibility that we have. We keep saying, Lord, send us power, but we have to start doing our part. Bring our hearts in unity with Christ and our lives in harmony with his work. It's not in harmony to attend church, and when I finish attending church, I go back home. That's not what it is. Our mission is not to consume the gospel. Our mission is to share the gospel. So we bring our lives in harmony with this work, and the Spirit will fall on us. So I hope that you all be enthusiastic to be part of this. So how to prepare our church? Just be involved. That's what I have to share today.